Our brain is such a complex machine that even us humans are still trying to figure out what's going on inside our brain, how do we make decisions, and what makes us react to something. There's a popular saying that we know more about the universe than what's happening inside our brain. It's all still a mystery. So far, we have figured out only a tiny fraction of what's going on inside there. Whenever we hear a negative word, one might think that we would be able to catch those words in an instant because we think evolution has fine-tuned our brain to hear the negative words for survival. In fact, there are plenty of research supporting the fact that whenever we hear negative words, our brain slows down to process it and makes more mistakes while performing a task. Despite all of that, a new study by the title Conscious Detection of Spoken Words Depends on Their Valence suggests that when people were focused on a visual task, they were less likely to consciously notice negative spoken words than neutral ones. This is exactly the opposite of what the researchers thought would happen. They thought that people would be able to notice the negative words more just on the basis of the fact that it is a negative sounding word. But that doesn't make the previous research irrelevant. They might even be supporting them. But before going to that, let's first get a better understanding about the research. We're going to discuss how did they do the research, why does our brain act this way, and what are the limitations. Researchers at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem performed 3 experiments with 101 participants, Hebrew-speaking adults, where they had to complete a visual task with a stream of pseudo words playing in the background. And occasionally meaningful words will appear and they had to acknowledge its presence by answering some questions. For example, the Hebrew word for dog is keleb, but if you change it to relay, it has totally lost its meaning. The reason they didn't just play the meaningful words is to avoid sudden attention towards it. So they keep playing the meaningless pseudo words in the background and they're sneaking in few meaningful words in between. Among the meaningful words, there are neutral sounding words like table, clock, and negative sounding words like knife, prison, murder. In first experiment, the participants were shown images of purple gribbles figurines that look like this, and in each trial, they would either change the position of the gribble position with same gribble or generate a new one, and they had to figure out if it is the same gribble as the previous one, all while words were playing in the background. 80 images of gribble and 72 Hebrew words were chosen for the test. From time to time, they would interrupt the participant with a question to see if they recognized the last played word. They were asked to choose between 0, 1, 2, and 3, with 0 being I only heard meaningless syllables, 1 being I'm not sure if I heard a meaningful word and I can't repeat it, 2 being I think I heard a meaningful word but unsure I can repeat it, and 3 being I heard a meaningful word and I can repeat it. And what class do they belong to between animal, person, and object, so that the answer will always have a 1/3 probability. They were not given any indication if they were right or wrong at that moment. The results confused the researchers so much that Chen, the lead author of the research, said, "We thought it was a mistake, so we repeated the study while adding new words. The results gave us the same trend. People notice negative words less." This is the highlight here. They weren't able to notice the negative words as much as they were able to notice the neutral words while performing the difficult visual task. In the second experiment, they changed some of the words that most people couldn't hear and performed the same experiment. Again, the same results, they noticed the negative words less. In the third experiments, they have made the visual task easier just to see if that changes the outcome. Instead of able to recognize if the gribble is same as the last one, they had to identify whether the gribble was facing upwards or inverted. It still showed the same result. They were recognizing negative words less. Now, why does it differ from the previous researches? The previous researches were solely done on the impact of negative words without any distracting element. Here, our main focus was the visual task at hand, not the auditory response. So the negative words is having a secondary effect on our brain instead of the primary focus. Which brings us to why does our brain avoid the negative words but not the neutral words? One possible explanation is that our brain might have ignored the negative words, but it is because it is cognitively heavy and would distract us from our visual task, so it chooses to ignore it. The researcher gave an example of a bus driver who needs to ignore a passenger who angrily speaks on their phone. Not hearing the negative information that might distract the driver might actually be beneficial to the driver. Another one might be that the words enter in our short-term memory, but it fades away so quickly that the participants were unable to recall them, as if it never entered the conscious brain, conscious mind. These are all speculations. We just don't know. We just know that they have been able to consciously detect. We just know that they have not been able to consciously detect the negative sounding words. But we don't know why our brain acts this way. Lastly, he added, if you think of the unconscious as a gatekeeper guarding us against things that may harm us or influence our decisions, you might ask what happens if this gatekeeper screws up and it fails to perform the filtering. Like, how would it affect us? After everything, this is a research done on a limited scope and further research should be done on top of this idea. Firstly, the study is done with single words. They haven't done the tests for sentences, stories, or more realistic listening environments. It is done only for negative and neutral sounding words. So positive and taboo sounding words are not tested at all. It is only done for Hebrew speaking audience. The research might give different results when it is done on a clinical population managing anxiety disorders, phobias, or post-traumatic stress disorders. All in all, the findings suggest that our non-conscious mind may play a larger role in shaping our everyday experiences than we realize.